Hey guys, Lord Sora here, back with another PvP content. I have been wanting to make a video covering key information regarding PvP so it is more accessible and enjoyable for everyone. I personally really enjoy D4 PvP and it can be a ton of fun. However, it does have a huge barrier of entry and most people quit before they can experience its fun, mainly due to PvP information being not as accessible. There has been this common misconception that PvP is a one-shot fest. Yes, you can get one shot, and you can kill players with one shot with certain broken builds. However, this statement is far from the truth. Here in the background, you're watching my duel against one of the best, if not the best rogue in Diablo 4, Bui, and our fights have always been very fun, constant mechanics, monitoring strategies, and it is far from just being a one shot. It's simply a back and forth, good competitive duel. It's simply because we are running quite optimized PvP builds. PvP is only a one-shot fest because you're in a PvP zone with your PvE build. Your build simply is not considering PvP mechanics, PvP caps and breakpoints. You simply did not optimize your build for PvP just yet. Rightfully so, because there are so many unknowns in PvP and not enough guides out there. I'm hoping to shed some light on those things in this current video, so hopefully whatever class you play, you can keep these things in mind to make your tune more PvP ready. Disclaimer, some of these information might change over time. Part of the fun for me with PvP is that endless discovery and testing. Based on my own personal test and reliable sources, these are the information I have gathered. However, full transparency and disclaimer, some of these information might be slightly off or change over time. With that being said, I'm sharing everything truthfully, that these are the principles I have been following and it has been working very well for me. So hopefully the information in this video will definitely get you to a really good place. Alrighty, before we ramble on further, let's jump in. I'm going to try my best to keep this video direct, covering most important initial aspects without throwing too much information your way. Like I said, I plan to continue making more informational videos like this in the coming weeks. Basics and unknown variables. Alrighty, first let's talk about some of the known caps, breakpoints, what works and what does not in PvP. Let's start with the armor cap. Based on my tests and reliable sources around me as well, we found the armor cap to be 7800 this season. It is mostly likely going to be around this value going forward in PvP. Armor is your main mitigation against bleed damage that bleed barbs using, physical damage, which is what Fizz Rogues will be using, and it will be also working against Thorns barbs, so make sure you hit at least 7800 armor in your PvP build. Then resistances. Resistances are capped at 70%. Via your Paragon or Gem slot in your jewelry, you really want to cap on most of these resistances. I personally like to find a way to cap almost all of them so that I'm covered no matter what type of opponent I'm fighting in the fields. Because if one of those are not capped, you will most likely be one-shotted by that damage type. Resistances will be your best mitigation against most of the damage over time damage types out there. Let's talk about offensive breakdowns. Crit damage, first of all, is believed to be capped around 100%, but looks like it is okay to get up to 200%. It gets really big time diminishing returns after that, so if you're taking advantage of crit damage and your crit damage bonus is between 100 to 200%, you're good to go. Overpower cap is at 150%. The main reason why Hoda barbs are so good in PvE this season, however they are not translating well into PvP, is these two caps in place. Unfortunately, Overpower is also capped at 150%. Earlier in the season we tried Bloodlance build as a Necromancer, however due to this cap, damage output was really not that high. On top of all this, last but least, vulnerability. I get a lot of questions about this and if it works, if it doesn't, etc. Vuln works with damage over time damage types and it does not scale with direct damage, so you do want to invest into Vuln if you're a dot damage over time based build. You do not want to if you're not a damage over time build, which we'll touch on a bit more why it is best to play damage over time builds in PvP in the comment sections of the video. Before we talk about how to do more damage, let's talk about how to survive first, because if we survive, we will live long to enjoy PvP, and that's the common complaint that we are hearing. People just get one shot and they quit. So let's figure out how we can survive longer and enjoy PvP. Alrighty, since we covered most of the hidden caps and breakpoints, let's talk about how we can increase our survivability. Once we make sure we hit all the armor and resistance caps, we're going to try to have as much max life as possible without sacrificing much damage. Currently, I have almost 30k life, and there are many ways to increase this without running rubies. Make sure you min-max your Paragon, and if you have Doombringer especially, it adds tons of survivability that you should use. There is also Life Elixir in the game that is my personal favorite for the most part that I use. It will increase your life 20%. Once we make sure we stacked as much life as possible, time to stack some damage reduction. And then time to fill up all the DR buckets you can. There will be diminishing returns the more you stack each bucket. It's not really diminishing returns, however, it's how the math works. As you stack more percentages, they get less and less effective. However, there are no caps to damage buckets. So people used to say that each DR bucket is capped at 40%, so on and so forth. That is not the case. You can stack as much as possible. You will come across some very tanky rogues maybe, and if you were to look at their DR buckets, they will be around 60%. You see my DR buckets in the screen here. I'm pretty stacked. 60% all DR, 34% dot DR, which comes from amethyst gems from the gear, the purple ones, which is why I suggest over rubies, since most opponents in the fields will be some sort of dot build except thorn barbs. Then we have DR from close, almost 40%, DR from shadow dotted enemies, which is special to necro, and we also have DR while injured, around 40%. It would also be good to have some DR from distant, especially if you're fighting against firewall sorks. Yes, those firewall sorks, they melt you immediately. If you run DR from distant, you might have a better chance surviving against them. Defensive aspects, bubble and might are very important. Make sure to at least definitely run might, especially if you do not have a Shaco. You won't really need disobedience in PvP. I see this going around. People try to run disobedience to have more armor in PvP, but you should be already hitting the armor cap easily without disobedience, and uptime of disobedience will be quite low without the density of mobs, which you can choose to fight with mobs, but it's really a wasted aspect slot because you will be already armor capped ideally. There are also instances, elixirs, and PvP scrolls. I briefly also mentioned before that you could take advantage of elixirs in PvP. There are ones you can craft at the alchemist station, but also you can purchase some of them. My personal favorite is the max life one. In addition to elixirs, there are also incenses that you can use. There are 3 types of incenses, type 1, 2, and 3. You can stack all these 3 of them to give you some minor power boost. During season 1, when you die, you will actually use the incenses. However, this has been changed. Even if you die in season 2, you get to keep your instances. So I'm putting some of my favorites in the screen here that you can also try and take advantage of. Some of the other ones might work better for your build, but if you want some minor advantage as well running in the fields, you can take advantage of these instances as well. Additionally, depending on your class, there could be some affixes and stats you may want to prioritize. For example, as a necro, cooldown reduction provides great survivability due to the fact that you get more immunity, more mist uptime. In addition to that, one of my must-haves that applies to almost every class is the speed and movement speed. So one of the must-haves, movement speed on the amulets and boots, are very important in my opinion. Alrighty, since we covered how to survive, let's talk about how we're going to do damage, since sometimes offense is also the best defense. Doing damage in PvP is not that different from PvE once you know how things translate into PvP area, which hopefully you will after watching this video. In PvE, the main goal is always to dip into all the multiplying buckets, crit, wound, skill damage, then our additive damage buckets, crit won't overpower altogether. However, in PvP, like we mentioned, crit and overpower is significantly capped, and wall does not scale with physical or direct damage. So your best bet is always the damage over time dot damage in the current meta until further notice. So whatever your class you play, what you want to prioritize is the damage over time, playstyle, and damage over time buckets. Similar to PvE, you want to get all the multiplier damage bonuses from your Paragon and from your gear and stack as many as possible. On top of that, you do want to also have some investment at least into other additive damage buckets. In most simple terms, if you target most multipliers from your Paragon and from your aspects, you will see your damage increasing significantly. I'm showing some of the examples here in the video that you can utilize. One key information I would like to share is the exploiter aspect. I see a lot of questions if it works in PvP or it does not. It only works with damage over time abilities, and it does not work with direct damage or physical damage. So if you're running damage over time build, exploiter will be working for you. Last season we had Creeping Death, which was a huge damage boost to all the damage over time abilities. It had the same concept as exploiter aspect. It only worked with damage over time abilities. One last thing I would also like to show that might help you is the math comparison between multiplicative and additive damage. 10% multiplier equal 10% additive damage. So if you can get a 10% multiplier from your Paragon or aspect, it is equivalent of 100% additive damage. I do not want to make this video too long, so I will keep things short and sweet here, but I definitely plan on making a more in-depth video covering some of the damage buckets you should target in PvP to boost your damage compared to PvE. Overall, I hope this video was helpful. Wanted to quickly cover some of the most key information to give you guys a jump start. PvP is fun as the player base playing it. Without accessible information, I believe PvP is destined to die. So if you're curious about Diablo 4 PvP, like and subscribe to my channel. I do have a lot more content coming your way, especially Season 3 is approaching. Additionally, I have a great community Discord now that we're a bunch of PvPers, especially focusing on the Necromancer, but all the other classes as well. All the links will be in the description below. Lord Sora here, until the next time, cheers.